too often organisations look at and think about diversity, equity and inclusion as something that's separate or it's on the side. Yeah. Actually, to ensure that you're running a high-performing business that people want to work at, that clients and customers want to come to and consume services through, you have to be a diverse, inclusive organisation, right? Because it drives commercial performance. And the sooner that organisations make that connection, the better. It's so intrinsically linked and it's so important.
In this episode, I speak to Harshna Cayley, Managing Director of Barclays. We hear about her amazing career from the time she spent at United Biscuits to over 12 years at Visa, ending up at Barclays in the role that she's at now.
Then the hard thing is you've been somewhere for as long as you had. Why did you leave?
So I guess
I know a bit about you.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to learn. And I really want people like you in our industry to have their story told. People that have achieved. I'm going to give you compliments, by the way, throughout this. And I don't care if you don't like it. I'm going to give them to you. But I want people like you who have achieved what you've achieved. I want your story to be told. I want the journey that you've been on to be an example for people who are earlier in their career. So welcome to Not What I Expected.
Love that, Liam. Thank you very much. As uncomfortable as it is to talk about yourself, I think it's something that we all need to get used to, right? Whether it's talking about learnings or successes or failures, whatever it might be. So it'll be good.
Good. Well, I'm excited. The first thing I always say is let's go back to school.
Yep.
Where did you go to school? What did you love about school? What didn't you like about school?
So I went to school in West London, and it was a really diverse school. And I'm talking about my secondary school. I moved around for primary school a little bit because my parents moved around. But what I loved about school was just like the friendships, the connections, being a bit of me, but also fitting into an environment that was quite diverse and quite different to the environment that I was being raised in. So my journey's been defined by my upbringing and my core values. And I was born in an Indian household, Indian family with some really particular values and morals, and balancing that culture with the culture that was the rest of the world, almost like for me, school, the outside world. So that was always a bit of a juggle, right? Balancing two different cultures, in a way, two different lives as well. But, it might be things like, I was raised as a vegetarian, for example. And when I went to school, people would always ask, well, why are you a vegetarian? Don't you ever miss eating meat? Or you're
question.
A bit odd. Here's a special badge because, you don't eat meat. And it's just things like that, because whilst my parents raised me as a vegetarian, and it was largely driven by the fact that, they're devout Hindus, for me, and as I got older, it was much more about for moral reasons rather than it being religious reasons. So, that's just one example of a difference. But look, when I think about my upbringing and the values that I was raised with, there's so much that my parents taught me around, like hard work, working smart, setting foundations to be able to do brilliant things in life. And what they drummed into my brother and I was taking education really seriously. And so because of that, I think I took that path so serious, which was I will finish school, I will finish A-levels, I will go out and get a degree, I'll do all those things. And I was fairly textbook. Yeah. But I think I came out of that still feeling a bit lost, not really feeling like I knew what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do in life. So that was probably the start of that journey.
So the outcome is finishing it more than setting yourself up to a certain extent, because it's finish school, get a degree. One of the things that's interesting about what you said there, that's unique, is that your parents said work hard and smart.
Yeah.
What I think I see from most parents is work hard.
Yeah.
There isn't that work smart element. So what do you mean by your parents saying hard and smart?
So for the way that my parents taught me about work hard and smart, it was very much so around, ensure that you're working hard on the right things, not everything. Okay. Ensure that you're doing things that will get you to financial independence, for example. And that was like a really clear purpose for like my parents, but also which I still strive for, right? Which is, you know, job satisfaction or having purpose in what I do. And I think you've got to work smart to be able to achieve that. You can work hard, but you still may not be happy.
Yeah.
You still might not get that financial independence. So that's what they taught
Nice.
me. And I think that that's something that I've taken with me in
That's
that
like
journey.
that's almost like street smarts, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's not just like effort for the sake of effort.
Yeah.
Sake. There's a street. Okay, cool. So you go to uni.
Yeah.
Uni was near home.
No, I went to uni in Birmingham. I graduated with a computer science degree. As you probably have sensed, is I'm a starter finisher, right? If I
Yes.
say I'm going to do something, I will get it done, and I'll get it done with the best of my ability, and I'll work smart to make sure I get the right outcomes. So I graduate with this degree, not really knowing what I want to do.
What made you choose a computer science degree before we even get to what happened after? Because
So-
that's not a normal choice.
No.
It's not a normal choice, especially for a woman. Especially not in the last couple of years.
Yeah. No, I agree. Look, I think back then, bearing in mind this is about 20 odd years ago, right? Because I am that old and older. Like originally, when I thought I had a plan, I think I would have probably been an artist.
Okay.
Right? Because I loved art, I loved drawing, I loved everything about the subject.
Yeah.
And I was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I didn't pursue it at A level because I think that traditionally, particularly in the culture that I grew up in, the narrative was, well, art's not going to actually get you that financial independence.
Yeah.
I actually disagree with that now, knowing what I know about, the industry and how design and art actually can create, brilliant things. So that was like one thing. And then the second was what my parents wanted me to do, which was either go into law or go into medicine and to do like the stereotypical type paths. And so I didn't quite cut the grades, right, is the reality, to get into medicine. And when I looked at not achieving, a straight 3 A star at the time, although the rating system's different now, I then had to like pivot and think very quickly about plan B. And so plan B for me, thinking on my feet at the time, was, well, what's happening with the economy? What's happening in the market?
Yeah.
Where are the opportunities? And it was all around the rise of the internet and computing and tech and STEM roles were, whilst they were there, they weren't as appealing for females, as you say, right? And there's still a challenge around
There
that.
is.
So anyway, I thought, right, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for that because I think
it
that
so
keeps
much.
my options open.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I started my degree, it was very clear. It was very male-dominated, the whole course and my classmates. But that was okay. It was fine, right? I adjusted, I adapted. I was fairly comfortable just being, either the only woman or the outlier or being a bit different, thinking a bit differently.
Yeah.
And so I got through that, and out I came with this computer science degree, and not knowing what I wanted to do next with it, but I did figure it out in the end.
You went to work in a biscuit place, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Hang on, what is it? Talk to me about that. How did it happen? What was the story?
All right, so look, as soon as I hit 16, again, because seeing how my parents operated, I was very much so, I'm going to get an education, but I'm also going to get out there and start working. So whether it was weekends, whether it was holidays, I was, you name it. I've worked at Curry's, I've worked at Tesco, I've worked at, all sorts of, like a paint company, all sorts of places, right? British Gas, that's the other one. And I've sort of built that experience even before I went to university. So as soon as I came out of university with this degree, not quite knowing what I wanted to do, I thought, well, I'm going to bag the first job that I can get just to get in and start getting experience, which was this biscuit company. So United Biscuits is it's the owner of KP and McVitie's.
Okay.
So they came together, and that was the brand name, United Biscuits. And it was my first proper job in a corporate environment. It was really flashy, big office, lots of big teams, people dressed like, really, really corporate. And I was like, oh, golly, I feel really out of place because that's not really, the places that I'd worked before. But I did love it. I did about 6 months there. And it was like an account management role. Yeah. I learned a lot, but I knew that that's not really the role that I want to do.
Yeah.
And so whilst I banked a lot of experience and I tried a lot of free biscuits and KP nuts, and it was amazing, like, because they do a lot of their product testing with their colleagues, as you would.
Yeah.
But it was not great for like health purposes, because the amount of biscuit and nut that I consumed was just ridiculous.
Especially after uni, getting given free food rather than struggling
So
food.
it was like, oh, well, I need to hit the gym as well as consuming all these products.
So then what?
So then I did go and get a job that I was qualified to do, in theory, based on the degree that I had. So I went and joined a little company called Retail Decisions. And they were out in Woking, opposite. I started a role there and I was a coder.
Okay.
And so what the company did, and they're actually owned by ACI now.
Okay.
So they've gone on to do like bigger and greater things, which is great for them. And so I started this role. I'm a coder. I'm like working with big retailers around risk management strategies, fraud strategies. Yeah. And so I did that for a few years and I knew that I want more. I want to do more. I want to do something next.
How did people treat you in that job, and how many other women were doing it?
Look, I'd say it was fairly diverse as a company. It was a really small company, so that was quite nice. In the fact that there was like this family feel about it. It was a bit more sort of startup mode. I remember one of the kind of colleagues that I worked with that was quite close to, she was Turkish, she had this really diverse background, and it was great because I felt straight away I've got an ally.
That's really
I've got
nice.
somebody who is a bit different to some of the rest of that team who
Was
were
she
doing
an
the
engineer?
job. Yeah, she was.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so it was the two of us, and then like obviously the rest were quite male dominated.
That's quite a nice like her being in that with you sets the tone for making sure people aren't isolated.
Yeah.
Because you'd have felt amazing by having somebody with a diverse background.
It makes
female
such a
engineer.
difference. So it makes such a difference. And I think that if you see somebody or if you're around somebody that either shares a similar story or has got something in common with you, might look a bit like you, or, is female, whatever it might be, I think it then makes such a difference in terms of just creating that safe space and the environment where you think, you know what, I can learn from that, or I can take that as a platform to just feel comfortable and do what I need to do. So
I've never struggled with that because there's always loads of people like me. Do you know what I mean? So I want to. It's really important to understand. Do you know one of the first things somebody said to me in my first job is don't just speak to the people that are like you. Don't just go and find the guys that have played rugby. Go and find people that are the quiet people and that are the, different people. And it's something that stuck with me for sure. So you do your time as your coder. Your degree was worth it. Yeah. You do your time. Then what?
I knew that I wanted to go on and do more, do something different. And so I got an opportunity to apply for a role at Visa. So that was my next gig. And I remember going for an interview at, they were based in Kensington High Street. You know where the Kensington Roof Gardens was? You guys might be a bit young for that, actually. But that was like the venue when I was growing up. And to have an office that was based in the same location, it's like, and all the shopping, it was just like, my dream come true. So I remember walking in, going for this interview, thinking, oh, wow, it'd be amazing to work here, right? Yeah. And such a diverse organisation. Yeah. Anyway, so, I did bag the role there, and I spent around, probably 12, 13 years there.
What was the first role?
The first role, gosh, if my memory serves me right, was I was in service management. That's it, right? So I was a service manager. And it was sort of dealing with the releases and the changes that Visa conduct and impose both on issuers and acquirers. So, again, I'm talking industry language there, which,
that's fine.
I shouldn't do really. But, so I did that for a few years. And
how did it feel to get a Visa business card? Because I remember when I joined eBay and they gave me a business card, I was like, holy heck, like, look at that, that's my name on. Like, it was an amazing feeling. Did you have the same thing and proud with family and stuff?
I did. I remember when I got one at Retail Decisions, actually. I remember my first client meeting, it was like,
have my business card.
I have a business card. I mean, now I don't even have one.
No,
exactly. Who has one now? But yeah, it was amazing, right? To get that first corporate card, your business card, laptop, all of those things, particularly that transition, particularly back in those days where if you did work from home, it was like such a rare occurrence.
Big time.
And I remember the LAN cable plugging it in and that crazy noise that goes on in the background. Yeah. So yeah, look, I started my journey at Visa, 13 or odd years there, but doing a range of roles, whether it would be service management, whether it's product, whether it's technology, whether it's transformation, strategy roles. And I've got Visa to thank, really, because they really did give me a platform to just experiment and learn and try new things every couple of years, do something new.
Do you found that you were putting your hand up when you heard about stuff and being like, yeah, do you know what, that I could do that, I'll have a go? Or was there somebody? It probably was a mix of both, right?
Yeah, I'd say it was a mix of both. And probably as I was still quite young and early in my career, I took the onus on me, again, working smart. The other big thing during that time at Visa was also the changes that I went on a personal level, which is, I met my husband there. We got married. We then went on to have 3 daughters. And so I was able to do that and pack so much into like 12, 13 years, as well as grow and develop my career. And it's always a little bit challenging, right, for women who want to have a career and a family. And you can have both, but it's about how do you juggle the sequencing and the timing of that, and how do you get your mindset in a way where you believe you can have both, right? It's not about, well, I've got to take a step back because I'm going to go off and have children now. Inadvertently, there is a bit of a slowdown that needs to happen because you're out of the business. You're out of the business, you're forgotten about, you're out of sight, out of mind. So the onus is on you as an individual to make sure that you are staying accessible, you're staying connected, you're learning about what's happening in the industry, what's next for you, just taking that ownership. As long as that's something that you're comfortable doing, as well as being a mother and doing all those things.
To frame that, what I'd really like you to do is to explain your job when you arrived and the level of responsibility you had, and the job you had when you left and the responsibility you have, whether that's team numbers, whether that's P&L responsibility, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Because for you to achieve getting married, having 3 kids, keeping a job at a company for 12 years is amazing in itself. If you then apply the increase in responsibility to that, that's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah.
So what were you doing when you arrived? What was the responsibility? And what were you doing when you left, and what was the responsibility?
Yeah, look, I guess when I joined the organisation, I was an individual contributor, right? So all I had to worry about was my outcomes, my outputs, hitting my objectives, but also doing it on for the wider team. Yeah. I managed a few services, and then that kind of grew and got bigger across a number of services, particularly around 3D Secure and some of the risk portfolio. Yeah. But again, as years went on, it was about getting more and more breadth of responsibility, more products, more services to have coverage over, but still doing that by myself, right? Yeah. But being part of a bigger team. And then that transition started to kind of take place as I took on more breadth in terms of like the role that I did. It then meant, right, okay, well, now I had an opportunity to take on managing people, right, and running teams, and then like scaled leadership. So by the time that I left Visa, I was running, I started just working as an individual contributor, one particular product, to then by the time I left, actually leading a transformation program across the technology division, being the lead in terms of some of the kind of platform transformations that Visa Europe undertook at the time.
What sort of thing? What's an example of one of those?
At the time when I was there, I was really involved in sort of building of the ORS platform, the clearing and settlement platform, and it was all about creating that separation from Visa Inc. at the time, so between Visa Europe and Visa Inc. And then obviously now they're back together again, and there's obviously an integrated a platform set around it. But those are some of the
But we're talking like
transformations.
tens, hundreds of millions of
Oh,
revenues worth. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, large scale.
Then the hard thing is you've been somewhere for as long as you had.
Yeah.
It's a lifetime, right? It can be a career
Yeah,
lifetime for
yeah,
some people.
yeah.
Why did you leave?
So I guess I had so I went from I met like the love of my life at Visa, got married. We were married by 2007. By 2008, I had my first daughter.
Yeah.
By 2010, I had my second daughter. And then by 2013, I had my third daughter. Yeah. It was 2015 is when I left Visa.
Okay.
And the reason why I left was when I came back from having my third child, I just came back and I knew that I wanted to experience more or something different outside of the industry that I was in or the environment that I was in. So whilst the platform that Visa gave me was absolutely amazing, and, you know, the people who work, I mean, some people have worked there for like, 10, 20, 30 years, which is amazing. But for me, I was ready to move on and do something different. Yeah. And at the time, it felt like a really big emotional decision, but also a big step in my career, which was to, at that point, feeling a little bit vulnerable. I've just come back having my third child, knowing that we're done. Yeah. Still doing the juggle of like 3 young kids, wanting to have a career, being driven and doing all of those things, thinking, well, I'm going to make a choice to leave now and try something new, take a bet, take a bit of a gamble.
Must have been hard because payments is a finger on the pulse industry, isn't it? Everything moves fast.
Yeah. And
you must have felt a little bit like when you had those breaks, when you're having children, you come back and you must have felt a bit out of the loop.
Yeah. Oh, I did. And I think particularly with the third, I really did take the opportunity to just, enjoy being a mum and not worry about like what's happening at work or what's happening with the, the industry. Although the nature that I have is I will always try and stay connected. So it was such a bold, courageous move, but I knew that I had to do it.
Yeah, good for you.
And so when I did it and I got an opportunity to work for the IAG Group, so that's the International Airline Group, who own BA, Iberia, Vueling, Aer Lingus, so all of the airlines. And I came in to do a strategy role, which was around, where are the growth opportunities? How do we unify the loyalty proposition across the airlines? And it was like more of a central role, but across those, across the airlines. And so it was a really different role.
Yeah.
Right?
And a big role.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not as if you've gone, I'm going to try something else slightly different. It's just test the waters. You've gone big.
Yeah. No, it was a big change, different industry, different environment, a lot to learn, and also to feel like you've got to, like every time you go into it, whether it's a new organisation or a new business venture, you almost need to like rebuild your stakeholder base again, right?
100%.
And find your purpose and, almost like not necessarily start again, but it feels like that, particularly at that point in my career where I felt a bit vulnerable. I'm taking a bold step and I'm moving to a different environment, different role, different organisation. Don't know anyone really.
Did you have a mentor at that time or a coach?
No, I didn't. Not at that time. And in hindsight, I wish I did, because I think that would have helped me just in terms of that transition, just in terms of, just around confidence and like tackling imposter syndrome, those types of like feelings that I think you get when you put yourself in an environment where it's change, it's not something it's all very different, you don't necessarily fit in. But I didn't, and if I had my time again, I would have.
But I think the reason that you could now be a coach to somebody and be a mentor to somebody is because you've done it the hard way. You're not necessarily saying to people, do it that way because I did it that way, but you know the pitfalls because you managed to be the remarkable person that dealt with it. Because there's a lot of people that take that on and just falter and go back to Visa. Yeah. Did you ever be tempted to go back to Visa?
Oh, it was really tempting, really tempting. But I've always, as much as I love the brands that I've worked at, for me, I don't like to go back because there's so much of the world to experience. There's so many other great brands and organisations. So for me, it was I've made a decision to move on for the reasons that are important to me.
Yeah.
And like I said at the start, I am not a starter finisher. I did say that, but if I'm going to start something, I'm going to give everything to making that the best that it can be, right? And making it a success. And
It's integrity.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, look, I did that for probably about 3 years. And again, look, I learned a ton about a new environment around how payments and loyalty sit hand in hand and how intrinsically linked it is. How, that business model within the airline industry operates, and how each of the airlines, they like, whether it was friction that they had around their operating companies and how they did business and how they wanted to tackle loyalty, which was very nuanced across the markets and the regions that they were in. And then this desire at a central level to unify, to have one platform, to have, a currency, a loyalty currency that was ubiquitous, that would work across those airlines, but partners such as Amex or such as Barclays and such like, right, to be able to create consumer behavior, which is you can earn loyalty anywhere you spend, anywhere you go, but you can redeem loyalty not just on flights but on experiences, right? That was the whole kind of premise behind.
Do you reckon you did it?
I think, look, I think I led and was part of a big transformation for the IAG group, and I've since seen them do some amazing things. So look, I don't think that it was like, I can claim, right, well, they smashed that all because of me. I think I know I played quite a large role in that, but that journey still continues for them.
It always will as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Expectations change from consumers, so does it. So after there, what was next? And how did the next role come about? Because by this time, people are knocking down your door, right? That's what happens, right? You do good stuff and you move around. And I think I started my career in recruitment for my sins.
Yeah.
And if somebody had been at a company a long time, we almost didn't bother trying to reach out to them on behalf of our clients because it's going to be a much harder sell. But now you've started to do new things. Did things start coming to you?
Yeah, that's right. I think from there onwards, all of the roles that I've been in since, it's been through network. Yeah, it's been through being like tapped on the shoulder or a conversation, and then one thing's led to another, and so, look, through my network, I then went and joined a small fintech as part of the Equinity Group. And that, I think, was probably the most challenging part of my career. Going from being in large corporates, big organisations, to then going into running a smaller organisation. And it was brutal, right? It was about... like 1 minute I'm I'm pitching, I'm sales director. Next thing I know, I'm like compliance and ops director.
I know.
Next thing I know, I'm like making teas and coffees. Next thing I know, I'm, in front of the FCA getting our e-money license application through. And so I think I learned the most in that role in a short period of time. Yeah. But it was the most challenging part of my career as well, because it was such a change from large corporate to small environment where it is about bottom line. It is about trying to get to growth as well, right? Yeah. And it was about scaling and integrating that part of the business into the wider parent company. So
I think everyone
should
do
it well.
I do know it well, and I think everybody should do their time in a small company. I really do.
I think you learn so much, right? And it's definitely been an eye opener for me, which is, if you only ever are in large corporates, you're only gonna that's going to be your comfort zone, right? That's what you're going to know, is how to navigate, like whether it's politics or bureaucracy or slowness around change and innovation and those types of things. Whereas in a smaller company, yes, I was doing like 10 different roles at any one point. Yes, there was lots of focus around like hitting your numbers, like literally daily, weekly. There was also something quite rewarding about that role, which was my ability to influence change and make decisions as quickly as I needed to. And it was really empowering. But, I did a couple of years of that and knew, right, okay, let's see how far this goes. And so, look, I went from kind of joining that organisation, running global teams, and it was largely around, gateways. It was all around the e-commerce proposition, running legacy gateways, lots of partner gateways. A lot of capital spend to maintain those gateways, but innovate as well, and also land a new architecture that we were working to as part of the synergy. So there was a lot that we needed to try and achieve, as well as delivering the cost efficiencies as part of the synergies. The conversation was very much so, look, there's this big opportunity, Barclays card payments, such a big base across the franchise, lots of opportunity in the open market. The brand has a lot of weight in terms of trust and resilience, and just that affinity with both small businesses but also large corporates. And look, for me it was like, well, look, they've got the opportunity to do so much more than they're actually achieving at the moment. That's
a weird moment, by the way, because you've gone from where you started through Visa. You get to WorldPay. What was your title at WorldPay?
I think head of gateway, something like
gateway.
that.
But that's a big part of the org, right?
Yeah.
And now you look at somewhere like Barclays Card having been tapped on the shoulder, and you're like, I think we could do this better.
Yeah.
That's a long way to come from where you started. If you think back to your friend that you were coding with back at the place after United Biscuits, how often do you sit down and be like, fuck yeah? Seriously. Where's been the most like, fuck yeah moment for you?
Oh, golly.
In your career? Because that's got to be a cool one, hasn't it? Going into Barclays and being like, Barclays and be like, we could do better here.
Yeah.
Surely you're like, look around.
I think it's when, I think there's been moments in my career where it's been, either it's, whether it's around bonus or whether it's around certain outcomes that I've led, that moment where you sit back and you think, I've done it. I did that.
Yeah.
And so there has been a few moments like that. But I think the way that I'm wired as well, I'm quite understated.
Yeah.
And I probably don't do that enough, right? Which is, and my husband tells me all the time, right, look, you've gone from that to this, like, you should feel like pretty spectacular about that. And I think that it's just probably because of my upbringing, which is like always be human, right? Never let it get to you.
Yeah, of course.
Like you're the same as everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And just always come down a peg or two and just be a bit more understated about it. So I always try and remember that, and I think that's why I'm wired the way that I am. But there's definitely been those moments. Yeah,
of course. You go to Barclays Card, you have a look around, and you're like, okay, there's some stuff we need to sort here. How do you go about doing that? Because let's face it, the big banks are slow to move. They're stuck in their ways in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you do? How do you go about making change in a place like that?
Look, I mean, I think that, first of all, I don't think there's a silver bullet, right? I think that it does depend on, how well connected you are, how well you can demonstrate the business case, the opportunity, the investment versus the return, and, how you can navigate the system that you're in terms of politics, getting to the decision makers. And I think that's really important in large organisations and particularly obviously in banks as well. And look, when I first started the job, it was very much so about probably spending the first 3 months or so just listening, right? Learning, getting connected, understanding the customer base, understanding the P&L, understanding the strategy that a predecessor may have put in place, spending time with the right people to soak up what they think the opportunities and the challenges are, and just doing that, like just soak it up, just to observe, listen. And I think that has helped me. And every time I've done, whether it's started a new opportunity or a new organisation, and I think you've got to time and time do that, right? And I think that that really helped me for the first sort of 3 to 6 months. Is just doing that. What does the current landscape look like? What's the data telling us? And then applying my own experience on top of that to think about, right, okay, well, what's the go forward, right? What does good look like? How are we going to get there? How are we going to measure it? And I think, look, by the first 6 months or so, I pretty much had laid some of that out. And then it was about getting to sponsorship, getting to the right people, ensuring that my thoughts were well socialised and well understood, that the business case made sense, and just doing some of those pieces. And so that was the approach that I took.
So the challenge is that you've got to do that while also being a champion for how businesses should be run, which I know you definitely are.
Yeah.
There's things that are actually, are they more important to you? Do they have equal importance? All the extras that you push about diversity and inclusion and all those other great things.
Yeah.
How do you balance that with, I've got to come in and actually make a difference in my core role?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that too often organisations look at and think about diversity, equity and inclusion as something that's separate or it's on the side. Yeah. Actually, to ensure that you're running a high-performing business that people want to work at, that clients and customers want to come to and consume services through, you have to be a diverse, inclusive organisation, right? Because it drives commercial performance, it drives shareholder value, it drives those outcomes. And the sooner that organisations make that connection, the better, because then it's really taking that agenda and using it to build your culture and to deliver the outcomes that a company needs. It's so intrinsically linked and it's so important. So how I practically manage it is, as I've said, right, I try not to have it as something that's separate, a separate project, a separate thing, but actually having it day to day, but also role modelling it, not just chatting about it, not just it being about numbers or metrics. I think that is important, but it's also about sharing stories. It's about creating a platform. It's about celebrating neurodiverse colleagues who actually will bring a really different lens to how you might solve a problem that you haven't thought about. It's about understanding, people's backgrounds and, how they go about like understanding what a customer might be thinking or a segment of the customer might be thinking, because actually the way that you've designed it is very, it's not with that in mind. So it's just about pulling out more and more of those use cases for why diversity, equity and inclusion matters intrinsically in your business, in how you build culture, how you drive results, all of those things. So I see them as really tightly connected.
I love that. You've made me think about retailers in about 2015. I think it was a guy called Andy Harding, and he might watch this to be fair. He was the chief customer officer of House of Fraser. And he did a great job. And his job was to be an advocate for the customer, but something always bugged me about it. Because his role was to sit on the board and to say that finance should think through the eyes of a customer. And I was like, okay, well, do you need a person to do that?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't it that everybody just has a mandate to live and breathe these things, which is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think there's diversity inclusion officers that are in businesses because we are such a long way from everybody. There has to be a single champion driving that. Yeah,
I think you need to be able to do both, right? Because we need to level the playing field. We need to almost like make it every day, which is you don't have to think about diversity, equity and inclusion because it's happening.
Correct, exactly.
Right? You see that cross-section in the teams, the customer base that you have. But I think we still have a journey to be able to get to what, and I don't think we'll ever get to what, I mean, who defines what does good look
Correct,
like,
exactly.
right? Because it's continually evolving and continually moving. But I do think that to get organisations to have that, almost like that top-down push, you've got to bring somebody in who's that is their sole purpose.
Yeah, fly the flag.
Right?
Yeah.
And they will represent that and they will push it through and they'll champion it. But then you also need advocates right across the organisation, not just at a senior level, but really deep within the organisation. You've got to drive it bottom up and top down.
Love that.
And it's a bit of a mixed tactic approach to be able to get to what will represent the cross-section of society that we live in, which should really be the outcome.
Well, good for you for pushing it and carry on.
Yeah.
Well done on your recent promotion.
Thank you very much.
What's the title now?
Look, we never quite have sexy titles in banking, but my official title is Head of Acquiring and Gateway.
So acquiring and gateway, like if somebody's watching this, like my mum or my nan that doesn't know that, like what is that in Barclays? Like what does that look like? And if you can explain it in a way, you know, when somebody pays, what happens would be really useful.
Yeah. Right. Like, look, in simple terms, if we think about us as consumers, right, we all go out there, and whether it's doing your shopping on the Sainsbury's app, for example, and or going into the Sainsbury's store, that payment capture as part of that checkout experience is actually enabled by a gateway.
Okay.
That's what a gateway does. It enables that experience to happen. So you as a consumer, you've bought your bread and your milk and your, you know, whatever your weekly shop is. You've checked out and you've paid, whether it's with a Apple Pay, whatever it might be, right? You don't really think as a consumer, well, I wonder what's doing that like checkout thing in the background. And you don't need to, because that's what a gateway does, right? And so that's the gateway element, is the payment capture, whether it's in-app, in-store, or whether it's online. And then the acquiring part is the actual connecting to the card schemes to essentially do the back-end processing, so the movement of the money.
People don't grasp how much goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to think, okay, so Barclays are massive, but so are Visa, and why is WorldPay in there, and who's PayPal? So it is a murky, complicated world behind the scenes, but the scale of it's enormous.
It is.
Like for Barclays, you know, acquiring goes is an enormous part of the business. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's epic.
Thanks very much.
the final thing, I always like to finish on some predictions. And the predictions are interesting because it can be from a consumer lens. When we go into shops, what's that going to look like, for example? But more broadly, because there are going to be a lot of people listening to this that are payments experts.
Yeah.
So if we could have something from you that's like what payments looks like, you know, consumer payments, what's common, and then a more deep, detailed, technical payments prediction.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that from a consumer point of view, like I get a lot of my inspiration from my teenage daughters, right? Because seeing what their shopping experiences are like and how different they are to mine, I think is likely to, you know, like stick with us, right? So you're going to find a cohort of society where their shopping experience will be, it's in the moment, it's in the channel that they're in. So it'll be fully embedded, fully integrated in that commerce journey. And it might be enabled through a social channel, right? Through alternative commerce journeys. And I think that consumers will demand and expect brilliant experience and it to be in the channel of their choice, in the method of payment that they want to pay with, on their terms. So I think consumers will more and more want to see that choice, want to see the friction-free experiences in the environment that they're in. So I think, I mean, what that does for payment organisations that are all trying to get a bit of a share of that transaction, right? Whether it's that commerce experience or the payment experience, it means, well, how much of that can you solve for end to end? Or what part of it you can solve for, and how do you partner behind the scenes to ensure that it's a smooth journey for consumers? Because if it's not smooth, we know that consumers, they will ditch that transaction, right? They'll abandon the cart and they'll go somewhere else where it is easier. And I know I do that. And I know that, you know,
if I see an ad on
me.
Instagram and I click on it and it hasn't got Apple Pay, so I have to fill everything out, I don't do it.
Yeah.
And that's happened in less than 5 seconds.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's the thing, right? Buying choices are all about its ease and convenience and on my terms. And I think, look, the other trend that I think we'll see on the consumer side will be just alternative methods of commerce. So whether it's around, WeChat commerce, social commerce, subscription payments, those types of different models like rental, I think there's going to be so many different forms of commerce journeys in different channels. And how do payment organizations and how do retailers, whether you're small or, large, whether you're platforms enabling those experiences, how do you ensure that commerce and payment looks like one? Yeah. That's the tough part. How do you ensure that the data that you're serving up, the data that you're kind of enabling to drive those experiences is all joined up and really smooth. But I think that's going to be a really big driver in years to come, and it's already here, right? And
that feels like a battleground. The commerce buying journey dictates what happens in payments to a certain extent, right?
Yeah,
because here's how we want to buy stuff. Let us pay for it.
Yeah,
really,
exactly. And so, look, you know, I think that largely on the consumer side, it will be around those buying choices and experiences being really slick. And I think on the other side, and this is probably more for like payment service providers or your financial institutions, fintech and such like, it'll be around which battleground do you pick, right? Because there's just so many out there, and how do you differentiate yourself, and what part of that problem do you solve? Yeah. And so we've seen so much in this space, whether it's around, you know, fintechs or technology organizations really providing AI capability to be able to improve customer experience or to improve marketing or reduce fraud, right? I think that's going to be like a really key area in the future. The other one will be around orchestration. And we're seeing like so much out there, whether it's orchestration at point of sale or at e-com. I think what large retailers are really looking for is they want real-time data, they want more control. And I think they want to do more of what the traditional payment service provider would typically do around value-added services, particularly around fraud and data analytics. And so that's the place where orchestrators are trying to, you know, that's the sweet spot that they're trying to tackle. So I think we'll see more of that. The other one is around regulation. You know, I think that, like, particularly in the UK, there's a lot of regulation that I think, you know, banks and financial institutions need to comply with. They need to navigate. They need to get to standardization and compliance. And I think that often that can be quite consuming for large institutions to be able to like move a big engine around, around certain dates and so on. And that's where partnerships become really important, right? Partnering with fintechs or players out in the industry that can help them solve a part of the problem statement or the value chain that they can't get to quick enough or fast enough, or they can't innovate as quick. On it. So, exactly, and that's why it's so important for businesses like yours, right? Which is you solve a critical problem that many financial institutions grapple with, and I think that's why these partnerships are so important.
Honestly, I loved that. That was awesome.
Thank you.
And again,
thanks for having me.
People should be celebrated, and you're one of them. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope your daughters enjoy watching this.
Yeah, I hope so. I did tell them I'm going off to do a podcast, and
I bet they're like, Mum, you're so cool.
Yeah, no, they think I'm famous.
Exactly. I love it. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes another episode of Not What I Expected. I hope you loved that as much as I loved recording it. If you like it, let us know. If you don't, tell us how you think it could be better. Thanks, and see you again.